All right, Shalom. You reached the He Pray channel. My name is Isaac Mawath. But first and foremost, I want to say call Halayim Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai Bahashim Harakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of 7:13:19. Where I learned this truth from and who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect, 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So all people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So it's not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah in his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. As always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Kashah Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah allowed us to be a edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. So, something I've been going through and, observing when I'm out in the danger room, which is, the world, constantly, well, not constantly, periodically, I should say, to refrain from exaggeration, but periodically, someone always asks for money. Do I have a dollar? Do you have any change? And I always say no, because in all actuality, I don't. I don't carry physical money anymore. You know, there was a point in time I used to have a problem with actually, losing and misplacing money. Sometimes even upward up to, half a thousand or more. So the spirit has been on me to just, keep money on a card. And not only the spirit has been on me to do that, but, Esau, the so-called white man, who started calling himself white in 1681 in North Virginia after the Bacon Rebellions. He's gradually merging into a digital system. And I just did a show or setup where it was nothing but about AI. But long story short, this society is veering away from using physical money, and it's affecting you people that are under misfortune. Whether you homeless, whether you need aid assistance, and you're trying to ask the community, which the community goes back to a certain deity. I want to say Baal Berith. See, if I'm not mistaken, Baal Berith. maybe I'm wrong with the name of the certain deity. Mind you, this is all going with the spirit. Yeah, I forgot what if it's not Baal Berith. But these are a few Hestia and Themis, which is part of that pantheon, those Greek gods. But anyway, they try to seek aid from the community, but, or, succor, which means aid or help or assistance. But as, you know, uh, the term being used through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Shah in the mouths of his prophets, Esau is cutting off the ring. He's putting you people into desperate situations. And just as all predator animals, they attack the weak. So the weak in this society are going to be the ones that are going to suffer, especially initially, which this is going to affect everybody through the implementation of the MOTB or the CHIP. This is Revelation chapter 13, verse 15. It says, and he had power to give life unto the image. The image is, let me see. Image is in the old Roman system, the old Greco-Roman system, you know, and, all the things that it is as far as its ideologies and, its doctrines and so on and so forth. It says, the second beast, also called the false prophet, which the second beast is NATO and the EU, and the whore that rides NATO and the EU is America. America is nothing but a corporation that was constructed by its mother, Great Britain, which through the spirit, I believe, or I'm leaning to believe that those Edomites that were in Britain were Eliphaz, being the progenitor of Esau, and pretty much the father or the principal son, the firstborn, therefore the leader of the tribes of Esau. And if you notice in history, it's Great Britain that established all these different nations. Says his rule in supporting the first beast, which is the time in which Esau ruled Rome, Italy. And also you Israelites, you were living in Rome as well. Geographical location usually the south, southern Sicily. It says the deception and signs he performs, the enforcement of worship toward the first beast. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah. Based on the surrounding text, the second beast commands the world to make an image of the first beast. And it says commands the world. And that's why you're seeing Esau doing what he's doing in respect to reining in on the sovereignty of these heathen nations. Because his quest is to conquer the planet and rule over the planet in wickedness. It says he then has power to animate or give breath to that image. Give life in the surrounding text means the image appears to come alive, it speaks, it functions as part of the deception, it becomes a instrument of enforcement. This is not described as natural life. It is a sign, a wonder, a deception empowered by the second beast, which through the spirit, that image also leads into his AI technology because he wants AI to govern his world and make decisions, make judicial decisions, make decisions for you. When you get to see his brain interface, they'll be able to control you, you know. Let me see. So the surrounding chapter shows this is part of a larger system involving miracles, which is his technology, deception, enforced worship, economic control, the MOTB, right? So going back to Revelation 13 and 15, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, right? Because they're going to be putting people to death. So that's the reason why they, in the Obama administration, they acquired all those different coffins that can hold up to 20 something corpses. That's why they got those guillotines set up so they can behead those individuals that refuse to comply. It says the Greek word for speak in Revelation 13:15, lalisia, lalio. This is the standard Greek verb meaning to speak, to utter sounds, to make a declaration, to give voice. But the nuance of lalio is important. What lalio means in Greek. Basic meaning, lalio originally meant to make sounds, to chatter, to speak plainly or audibly. It's used for human speech, divine speech, prophetic utterance, even the speech of inanimate or supernatural things. Even the speech of inanimate, because that AI also is going to play a heavy role in this new world order, man. And that's that speech of inanimate. you know, which means it's, if I'm not mistaken, not alive. Inanimate, early 15th century without vital force, having lost life, lacking vivacity, without spirit, and AI is without spirit. Just bear with me real quick. Delete this and this. So, going back to Revelation, verse 13 and 16, it says, and he causeth all, so everybody on the planet, right? And knowing Esau be the devil, he's going to even go into those different regions in which there's, certain groups of people that are uncontacted and force the chip on them or outright just slaughter them. Is now coming out with the whole shit show that Donald Trump pulled with Maduro. They killed over 80 something people, man, which was a massive war crime, right? And it shows the desperation of this place. This is a sign that America is desperate. As there's now videos pouring in that this economy is collapsing, man. And you see it when you go to the grocery store. It says both small and great, rich and poor. So you could be one of those individuals asking for money in front of a store, or you could be one of those individuals being asked. You could be the president, or you could be the chief authority of a tent city, man. Right? It says rich and poor, free and bond. Whether you're, a freeman, right? You're free to roam, or you're locked up. You individuals that are in these institutions, they're gonna present the C hip onto you as well. And sometimes through medical coercion, they force things on you. It says to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, because that chip can be administered in your hands, or you can receive the brain interface, which Elon Musk made a statement that 2026 is the year of singularity. Let me see real quick. Word in on singularity, early 13th century, unusual or exceptional behavior. Mid 14th century, singleness of aim or purpose, devotion to a single thing, which that's that new world order, man. getting you people uh, with that interface, that microchip, you know, which these are all the discussions that are held in these secret meetings, these secret councils of the wicked, right? It says, and that no man might buy or sell. So you're not going to be a part of this system, this digital economy. So you're not going to be able to buy or sell, man. At least you have these devices implanted into you, which is not going to start out right with them requiring you to get the implant, but it's going to be done through gradualism. It says save, so the only ones that are going to be able to buy and sell is the ones that have the microchip or the brain interface. Save he that had the mark, which that word mark, going into the Greek, charagma, means something incisioned.
Strong's G 5480, charagma, charagma.
Right, going into a scratch or etching, because that needle, which is the palisade, or the kurok,
Strong's G 5482, charax, charax.
is like a pail or a stake. That needle, and you only could use a needle once because the tip will bend once puncturing your skin, right? So once it punches your skin, it administers a device called the microchip, RFID NFC, which is going to have all your information on it: your driver license, your identity, how much money you have, where you live, your whatever agreements, your blood type, what you like to do, what you can and cannot do as far as gaining access to certain things. All that is going to be written within that chip. Grapho,
Strong's G 1125, grapho, grapho.
which means to fill with writing, So all that different data that is about you, you know. So finishing up, it says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So you're not going to be able to function. On the co-pilot, it says he causeth all, he, the beast system. And notice that this is starting all in Europe because it's the beast system, which America acts as a enforcer, the war. It says ruling power structure causeth to make, they're going to close the ring, box you in the corner, right? Put your back against the wall, compel, they're going to make it seem as if it's a cool thing, trendy, using, different idols, that you people look up to, convincing you to sin against Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua. It says pressure through policy. Yeah, you might not, or might not, you're not going to be able to have a job. You know, which 2020 was a test run for all these things. You're not going to be able to go to the grocery store or get food or get water or fill your car up or even have a car, because your car can only start if you have a C hip. You're not going to be able to use a gun because these guns are going to start having locking mechanisms placed on them, as some already have, which only could be unlocked if you have a C hip that recognizes who you are, right? It says economics and necessity, not just brute force. Both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, total spectrum. Status doesn't exempt you. The poor are not spared. They're leveraged first. And it's you individuals that took life for granted, or, you might just be receiving chastening of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, because he's the one that maketh rich and maketh poor. You're set up in that position for a reason, man. And, as I said, predators have a propensity to attack the weak. Let's see. Propensity, 1560s. Disposition to favor, 1610s. A bent of mind, natural or acquired, with tie plus obsolete adjective, propense, inclined, prone. So they're inclined and prone to attack the weak, man. Why do you think these Edomites, these so-called white people who started calling themselves white in 1681 due to the Bacon rebellions, why do you think they always attack weaker nations and those that can't defend themselves? It says, going back to AI, it says that no man might buy or sell. Direct economic control, access to food, shelter, and survival is gated. Cashless infrastructure, when you're seeing that at these grocery stores, they want to funnel you into the self-checkout line, getting you conditioned. Me personally, I like to go through the cashier, but sometimes some of these stores don't give you a choice. It says, cashless infrastructure is the perfect mechanism. And, the dollar is crashing as we speak because, they have but a short time. So they're trying to speed things up. And I hope that Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua is listening to our prayers and, granting the expedience. Save he that had the mark, conditional access. If you don't submit, you're locked out of the system. The homeless, already outside banking, get hit first and hardest, right? Because I know I'm not the only one that says, I don't have a dollar, or I don't have any change, which I told this individual these things today. And I tell them all, unfortunately, because it's the truth, it's all digital, man. And maybe some understand, maybe some don't. But that's just the way society is moving. Am I gonna be in a position where I'm gonna say, "Oh, okay, man, I'm gonna sell out, or I'm gonna give up, or I'm gonna turn my back on Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai because of the conditions that Esau is setting, as far as not being able to buy or sell because of the money situation?" The answer is no, man. I'm trained to go. No, you should have been preparing your mind for these things, man. It's not these things that I'm afraid of. You know, the only thing I'm afraid of is failure, being a failure in the eyes of Yahweh Shai, man. You know, but this is Amos chapter 8, verse 4. It says, "Hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy," which the needy are you Israelites, and those that are swallowing us up is starting with these Edomites and these heathen nations. You know, those birds around the speckled bird, even to make the poor of the land to fail, saying, when will the new moon be gone? Because the moon is a sign for seasons, right? Let me see, get that real quick. Which, the new moon also determines when the Sabbath comes in. I believe it's 43. Let me switch to the KJV. This is Sirach, or the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 43, verse 6. It says, "He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times." Right. So you use the moon to determine the time, you know, as far as what? It says, "In a sign of the world, for the moon is the sign of feast," that determine feast, right? "A light that decreaseth in her perfection," meaning it wanes. "The month is called after her name." So the month is called after her name because of the new moon. "Increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven." Right? So the moon also determines months. It says, and if the moon determines months, it determines the Shabbat. So going back to Amos chapter 8, verse 5, it says, "That we may sell corn and the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat." There goes the word Sabbath. "Making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit." And that's what Esau does, man. He operates with false balances, man. And when you do a panoramic pan around the world, these countries all talk about how America is so expensive, and in their own country, things are cheap. And America is ran by greed. That's why it's in the debt that it's in. Verse 6, it says that we may buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. Yeah, and sell the refuse of the wheat. Let me see what AI says on this. So it says that we may buy the poor for silver, treating the poor like property. And that's exactly what we are, man. We're property of the rich elite bankers, through the birth certificate, through your social security card. It says using debt, rig, scales, and economic pressure to enslave them, reducing human beings to commodities. The idea is we can trap the poor in debt and buy them cheaply, and that's the the direction in which Esau is going. It says, in the needy for a pair of shoes, this shows how little value they place on human life. A pair of shoes represents a trivial debt, something cheap, something insignificant. The surrounding context shows they are willing to enslave someone over almost nothing, right? And even a thought came to my mind just now. I remember back in the day, uh, let me see if I can find it. This is Jacobia Grimes. Individual sentenced to life in prison for stealing candy is Jacobia Grimes. He was convicted of stealing $31 worth of candy from a Dollar General store and faces a possible sentence of 20 years to life in prison due to his 5 prior theft convictions, making him a quad offender under Louisiana's habitual offender law. Grimes' case highlights the state's harsh habitual offender law, which has drawn criticism for its excessive penalties. And that's how Esau gets down, man. Enslave someone over almost nothing. It says it exposes the cruelty of their economic system. It says, yeah, and sell the refuse of the wheat. Refuse meaning sweeping shaft leftovers, the worst part of the grain, right? And that's what they do. They give you the garbage shit. Even with the revelation or the revealing of what is really being bought in China, they're acting like China's products is cheap, but they're buying the cheap products and selling them for maybe even quadruple the price. And real soon, it could be any day now, really. You ain't going to see any shelves in these stores because China is not going to ship shit. It's over. It says the merchants are selling garbage wheat, mixing chaff with grain, cheating customers, maximizing profit through fraud. One being shrinkflation, man. Selling you the same size bag, but even with less within it. It says this ties directly to verse 5, where they make the ephah small, give less product, and the shekel great, charge more money, falsify balances by deceit, rig the scales. So the surrounding page content shows a system of economic exploitation, corruption, and dishonesty. So going back to Copilot, it says, swallow up the needy, which the needy are you Israelites. It says, devour, consume, erase their margin to live. Falsifying the balances, rigged systems, not just individual cheating. Now it's even coming out that these sports are all rigged, man. Now it's coming out that even with that invasion, people got rich because of, it seems insider trading was involved that caused Venezuela's economy to shoot upward to 38% just in result of Maduro being removed in the fashion in which he did, kidnapped or man-napped. It says, buy the poor for silver, turning poverty into a commodity. The poor become leverage. And then it quotes Proverbs 22:7. This is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7. It says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And that's exactly how Esau's system is set up. He puts all these nations into unsurmountable debt. And, he knows that they can't pay it back because his system is rigged. So in the future, he's inclined to go in there and take their resources, or, in some cases, as he's hidden to, taking over their whole land, being a part of this petrodollar system. And they don't want any competition on the planet, because Iran, Russia, China, Venezuela, Brazil, he's going after all those BRIC nations for trying to set up a alternative economy to the petrodollar. This is Esau's world, man. Commentary. Cashless plus debt-based systems intensify this. If your access is digital, your servitude is programmable. Micah, which, this scripture's been hidden a lot, speaking loud and clear. This is Micah chapter 2, verse 1, which it says, woe to oppressors, which woe means death and destruction. It says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it. Yeah. So they have, these, and it goes from the greatest to the smallest. The greatest just do it on the macro level, and the smallest just do it on a micro level of these Edomites, man. They think about ways that they can get over or stir up strife or cause wickedness. And as soon as they can, they perform. They get busy with their plan, for lack of better words. It says, because it is in the power of their hand. Right. And they don't have anything else better to do with themselves, man. Even though they have the whole world, they want to fuck your world up. Verse 2, it says, and they covet fields. To covet something means to want, to have greed for, and take them by violence. And since his sword is the military, he uses his military to go into these countries in which, it's a low probability of, having casualties, and then when he doesn't have any, he acts like he did some great feat, going up against rock throwers. Not saying those in Venezuela are on the same level as Afghanistan, but we've seen what happened to the American military in Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam. And the only war that they won was, some people are saying World War II, but they came in at the last, bleeding seconds. And, the only fame that they got really was dropping those bombs, man, on the already surrendered Japan. Just being a damn devil. You know, it says in houses, and even in America, they're going to start going door to door, apartment to apartment, condo to condo, flat to flat, duplex to duplex, house to house, mansion to mansion, and removing and kicking you people out of your houses and taking your goods. It says, and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. Because they want you to conform to them. They want you to be the demon that they are, man. Just like how Agent Smith was going around trying to change everybody to make a replica of him. Same thing that these damn devils have been doing, man. Why do you think you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous believe in the shit that you believe in and follow the ways that you follow? And even call yourselves the names that you call yourselves? Because they destroyed your heritage, man. Verse 3, it says, therefore, thus saith Yahweh, behold, against this family do I devise an evil. So the Heavenly Father is bringing evil onto these damn devils, man. And to their aiding and abetting co-conspirators, co-defendants, which is these heathen nations. And also, you 2/3. It says, from which ye shall not remove your necks, because you're not going to be able to escape the wrath of the Lamb, man, who's going to be as a roaring lion, man, the Lion of Judah, or Yahweh. It says, neither shall ye go haughtily. Haughtily is having an arrogant spirit. Now you got to watch out for these devils, and you got to watch out for these niggas, especially in that claim to be Israelites, to have this haughty spirit, man. Because, just as the devil, they go crouching, trying to humble themselves or appear humble, but they're still a fucking demon. It says, for this time is evil. So these are bad times. Yahweh Shem Yahushua is going to destroy these damn devils. It says, in that day shall one take up a parable against you, against these Edomites, and lament with the doleful lamentation, and say, we be utterly spoiled. Right, because they done stole the resources, did a regime change, now got them prancing in the street with their wrist limp, having women rule over them, having bullshit rigged elections because people are selected, not elected, and following after this damn devil's sadistic way of life. It says, he have changed the portion of my people. How have he removed it from me? Taking their resources, destroying their lands. It says, turning away, he have divided our fields. Yeah, because they act like, oh, we're going to make this place great again. Oh, we're going to really, they're just trying to hedge their bet against this astronomical, global financial collapse. On the AI, it says systemic disposition, housing, land, and stability stripped, feeding homelessness. St. James, which was one of the brothers of Yahweh Shai. St. James chapter 2, verse 1, it talks about the sin of partiality. Look at that word real quick. Now, partiality, one-sidedness, unjust or unreasonable preference for one party in a dispute or transaction, you know? So you have to have a position of being not a respecter of persons, right? But this is St. James chapter 2, verse 1. It says, my brother, have not the faith of our Adawan, Yahweh Shai, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai, or Adawan of glory, with respect of persons. You know, just because somebody is your friend, might have been your friend in the world, or a family member, you know, and you have a lack of using proper judgment because you're biased, because he's my friend, or he's my family member. So therefore, the opposition, you know, their their words don't mean anything, or whatever happens, I'm still gonna rule in favor of my friend or my family member. And this is a small example. For if there come unto you, it's like for if there come unto your assembly a man with a gold ring and goodly apparel, you know, he's dressed to impress, and he's impressing you. And there come in also a poor man in vile raiment. You know, he might not be all into fashion like that, you know, because in my observations in life, because I've always been a serpent in the corner watching the rats. But in my observation of life, you know, it's like I lost my train of thought. Shit, lost my train of thought. Let me start from the top. Verse 2, it says, for if there come unto your assembly a man with a gold ring and goodly apparel. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. In my observation of life, what I found is those that were raised by their mother are more uh, have a more emphasis on how they look. You know, they're the ones that, you know, want to dress in designer, and they want to, you know, be without a flaw in their appearance. You know, and those that are with vile raiment, they don't give a shit. Okay, maybe I might wear the same clothes, but those clothes are washed. You know, maybe um, I don't want to get a haircut all the time. Maybe I want to look rough because I work. And a characteristic of an actual man. You know, a lot of you've been in America for too fucking long, man. You know, and if an individual like John the Baptist came up, you look at him sideways because he had rough garments of inferior material. You know, so what would you? So what do? You give more attention to the nigga raised by a single mother that got all the showy shit, the ostentatious view, you know, than the poor man, which usually, even in Esau's movies, is always, you know, the poor prophet that was always right. One particular movie being The Clash of the Titans. Verse 3 says, "And ye have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing," which gay don't mean the LGBT shit. You know, if I'm not mistaken, it means happy. But let's see what it says in the interlinear. Lampros.
Strong's G 2986. Lampras. Lampras.
Which is shining, brilliant, clear, transparent, splendid, magnificent, splendid things, i.e., luxuries or elegances in dress or style. You know, so when you just to back up what I said as far as what I thought it meant, which is happy, adjective for the word gay, late 14th century, full of joy. So if you're full of joy, you're happy, merry, lighthearted, carefree, you know? And, you know, a lot of things that I do is to keep me from pride, man, you know? And even with me going to the gym, you know, sometimes I hate going to getting to a certain level because it draws too much attention. You know, especially fucking last night, man. All these fucking whores were on me, man. And all these fucking individuals wanted me to be wanted me to be in conversation. And I'm just like, man, I don't like it. But anyway, going back to St. John chapter 2, verse 3, it says, "And ye have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing, and say unto him, Sit thou here in a good place. And say to the poor, Stand thou there, or sit here under my footstool." You know? And that's not good, man. You should treat everybody the same, man, until they prove otherwise. You know? It says, "Are ye not then partial in yourselves, and are become judges of evil thoughts?" Right? Because our whole mission is to have a mind of a judge and to judge righteously, you know? But a lot of times, there's a lot of wicked men that have evil thoughts, and it prevents them from being righteous judges. And, you know, the first thing that the scripture says when you judge is to consider yourself. You know, a lot of you dish out certain judgments that you can't even go through. But then again, you think you're righteous. You think the Heavenly Father is dealing with you. Some of you think that just because you're in a certain group. Well, there's a lot of men that fell out all these camps, man. And they all done the same thing, which is falter and go back into the bullshit that, you know, they held on to in the world. You know, the shit that they secretly had a foot in. You know, some of you weird niggas had a foot in you. Verse 5, it says, "Hearken, my beloved brethren, have not the Most High chosen the poor of this world, rich in faith?" So you would rather be rich in faith, man, than have riches. You know, because if Job didn't have that faith that was richer than his riches, then he would have cursed Yahweh Shah and died. But he put everything in proper perspective. It's Yahweh Shah that deserves the glory, because he's the one that giveth and he's the one that can taketh away. It says, "In heirs of the kingdom, which he hath promised to them that love him," which is his elect. And those are the only ones that love him, man, even to the death, man. You know, and I'm not encouraging it, but the best way to see if you really do follow Yahweh Shem Yahshua is when, you know, the speed is put on you, man. And one of the most hardest tests to do is to do the work on your own, which I'm not promoting it, but that would be a fucking cold sifter, man. I'm pretty sure about 3/4, a half to 3/4 of you camps will come to naught if the spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahshua was for all men to do the work on their own, man. Which a lot of you can't do that, but yet you want to judge and ridicule others until it's your turn. And when it's your turn, you don't like it. You know, now you're defending yourself against, you know, the same words that you dished and said about others. Now it's okay now that you're in the position, you know, but for another man, you had no mercy. Not considering yourself, because you know there's a lot of wicked judges and those with no discernment. It says, verse 6, "But ye have despised the poor. Do not rich men oppress you and draw you before the judgment seats?" Right. So going to AI, it says, "Respect for him that weareth the gay clothing, preference for those who look bankable. Say to the poor, stand thou there, social and spatial exclusion. Today, it's also economic exclusion. In a cashless world, I don't carry cash becomes a structural excuse to ignore the poor." But I mean, shit, what could you do? What can you do? It's not that you want to ignore the poor, but, you know, you don't carry cash. You don't carry coin. You know, I was looking for some coin the other day and, you know, I couldn't find any. Because I was going to go to the water mill. You know, I'm pretty sure I don't know, but I sometimes when I don't have that much money, I go to the water mill and get water, man. They're only like 40 cents a gallon out here in Nevada, but 25 cent, I believe, 25 to 35 in California, man, which is a better or a cheaper alternative than buying the Crystal Geyser bottles at these dollar stores. But I didn't even have any change for myself, man. And that's just how this system is gravitating as far as direction. Matthew chapter 6 verse 24 says, no man can serve two masters, right? Because for lack of money, lack of bread, people would that are in this truth want to do other things to compensate so they can keep up a certain lifestyle or keep up with the Joneses, you know. Or a lot of you might think godliness is gain, man. All things that were given to me were given to me through Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. I don't want much. I don't ask for much in my prayers, man. You know, but the things I do ask for, I receive. But, humility reasons, I don't ask for much. I'm thankful just to, be able to utter his names, to understand his truth, to have wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, for my prayers to be answered, just like the other day, man. They had took me off the schedule, and I really need to work. I really want to work. They took me off the schedule. All throughout the day, I was, checking and seeing if, okay, maybe they updated it. I'm back on. Nothing. And during that time, I even casted 2 lots. I asked Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai if I'm gonna be, are you gonna allow me to go to work tomorrow? And both lots landed on no. And then I kind of got a little sad and a little depressed, but I was like, man, I was cursing myself out. I was like, man, stop tripping, man. You already know what time it is, man. It might just be that, something is going to happen that day and he's trying to keep you from it. Maybe a Steve Paddock moment, and after those 2 lots kind of, for lack of better words, broke my heart. I just prayed again. I prayed and asked Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai if he would please allow me to work and get some income, and then, after the prayer, I went to sleep. Then I woke up the next day, despite those lots saying no that I casted, when I woke up, I had my assignment, at 12 o'clock. My assignment was on the website, and I attribute that to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai answering my prayers, man. Not getting all fucking angry or, trying to minimize that depressive spirit, and sure enough, he delivered, man. I think I woke up at around 12, and it was updated, and the rest is history. Now I got another assignment on top of the one I just received. So Barak Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah, man. So I'm fully dedicated to one master. But a lot of you depend on the things of this world and your appetites, man. And that's who you're serving. It says, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he would hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve the Most High and mammon, which mammon goes back to money. You know, a lot of you're not content with your daily bread, man. You know, a lot of you don't even pray to go to work, man. You don't even pray for work. You know, you're so comfortable in your situation that you take things for granted. Just like all these individuals that, you know, find themselves in the predicament that they're in. You know, and I'm speaking about those in this world. Going to AI, says mammon, wealth, riches, the system of gain, a fully digital, surveilled money system is mammon optimized. First Timothy, it said 9 and 10, right? First Timothy chapter 9, Salakia chapter 6, verse 9. It says, but they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare and a trap, man. You know, because to be rich, you wouldn't have to have control of your appetites, your senses, because riches amplify whatever you are internally. If you're a generous person, you might be more generous. If you're an asshole, you're gonna become more of an asshole. It says, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, you're going to follow after your heart's desires. Whatever demon that comes across your mind, demonic thought. It says, which drown men in destruction and perdition for the love of money. So for the love of money, if you just love money, which, you know, all you people, especially you women, all you talk about is having money, and everybody knows you motherfuckers are broke. Everybody knows you motherfuckers is struggling. All you niggas think that people believe that you're actually rich and got what you say you got. Nah, man. Jake knows how to fake it till he make it. You know? It says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. While some, it's like a witch, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith. You know, and one being Genesis, man. And that's why they don't have the pure sound doctrine. It's like nails on a chalkboard. That's why I can't watch a lot of people, man. You know, I don't even like watching everybody in Great Millstone, man. You know, only like listening to a select few, which is okay. Because that's me guarding my spirit. You know, because just because you call yourself in a particular camp, the IUIC, the ISUPK, the GOCC, the GMS, or you call on whatever name, that don't necessarily make you of the elect, man. You know? And for some reason, the Most High separated me from every group that was, full of shit, which is observed through their actions and how well they practice what they preach. Even with the Muslims, them niggas was hypocrites. Certain camps, hypocrites. They weren't practicing what Yahweh Shah preached. So the Most High eventually is going to remove you from those that he don't want around you, and he's going to guide you. It says, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Yeah, misfortunes. Going back to Copilot, says the snare is not just greed, it's building systems where control of money equals control of bodies. And that's what Esau is trying to do. Sirach 13. This is Sirach chapter 13, verse 3. It says, the rich man have done wrong, and yet he threateneth withal. And that's what Esau's doing right now in real time, man. And he's basically daring these other superpowers to do something about it. It says the poor is wronged, and he must entreat also. Beg for, forgiveness. Let's see. It says the poor is wrong, the rich exploit, the rich threaten, the rich take advantage, the poor suffer loss. The poor person is already harmed financially, socially, or physically, and he must entreat also. The poor person must beg or plead. Even after being wronged, the poor man must appeal, plead, ask for mercy, try to calm the rich man, try to avoid further punishment. The word entreat here means to beg or supplicate. He must apologize even when he did nothing wrong. All right. Verse 4, if thou be for his profit, he will use thee. But if thou have nothing, he will forsake thee. So he's right now, he's doing that with, these nations, man. It says, if thou have nothing, he will forsake thee. Perfect description of a cashless culture where those with nothing, no account, no card, no phone are simply abandoned. Sirach 34. (21, 22). This is Sirach chapter 34, verse 21. It says, the bread of the needy is their life. He that defraudeth him, therefore, he that defraudeth him thereof is a man of blood. And Esau, he's that man of blood. Even going back to Ezekiel. Ezekiel 35. verse 6, verse 5. It says, because thou hast had a perpetual, which means long lasting, hatred, and has shed the blood of the children of Yasha'Allah, which is you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous, by the force of the sword, the Gatling gun to, now is military today, in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had a end, which is their punishment for their transgressions. Therefore, as I live, saith Yahweh, I will prepare thee unto blood. So, despite these so-called white people celebrating, they're not understanding that they're being prepared unto blood. It says, and blood shall pursue thee, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Right? And it also goes and says, that's why I make Mount Seir, which is the birth origin, or I shouldn't say the birth origin, but it's where Esau dwelt in Jordan, most desolate, and cut off from it him that passeth out and him that returneth, which modern day Mount Seir is America, man. Because we know America is going to be the only nation that's not going to be inhabited. So it says, I will prepare thee unto blood. Based on the surrounding page content, this means the Most High is setting Edom up for violent judgment. Edom will be placed in a situation where bloodshed comes upon them. The violence they inflicted will return to them, which is something that these devils don't understand, man. It says, and blood shall pursue thee. This is poetic justice. Blood shall pursue thee means violence will chase Edom. Judgment will follow them. They cannot escape the consequences of what they did. It says, since thou hast not hated blood. Since means since or because. Surrounding page content explains why judgment is coming. Edom did not hate bloodshed. They embraced violence. They rejected over, they rejoiced over Israel's suffering. They acted with perpetual hatred. So God is saying, because you loved violence, even blood shall pursue thee. This repeats the earlier line for emphasis. It means the same violence Edom practiced will return upon them. They will reap what they sowed. Yeah, they always talk about fuck around and find out. Well, there should be a campaign that's called Reap What You Sow. And they haven't did nothing but sow wickedness, death, and destruction. It says divine justice will mirror their actions. This is consistent with the surrounding chapter's theme of measure for measure judgment. And Esau, he ain't ready for that judgment, man. A person in their right mind wouldn't even want to be on the planet when the Heavenly Father and the Son returned to destroy Esau, man. That's how crazy and sometimes words can't even describe, the immense power that's going to be put behind the destruction of you so-called white people, man. And here it is, we all grew up to think that you were just these righteous people, man, and you're not. So going back to Sirach chapter 34, verse 22, it says, he that taketh away his neighbor's living slayeth him. And that's what Esau is doing to the Venezuelans right now by taking their oil. That's what they want to do with Mexico, take their resources. And that's what they want to do with Greenland. which is supposed to be a member of that European bloc or whatever. Let me see, just to make sure. Well, it's Denmark or Denmark. Says Greenland is designated as a member of the overseas countries and territories and is thus officially not a part of the European Union, though Greenland can and does receive support from the European Development Fund. So, see, once again, they're just attacking those that are weak. It says, and he that defraudeth the laborer of his hire is a blood shedder. A lot of you, hey, somebody defrauded me of my labor too, man. And who knows what the fuck happened to them. Somebody was trying to tell me a report of them after I done put a curse on them and their whole family. I didn't even give a fuck about knowing. So I don't, to this day, I don't know. I don't really give a shit either. Oh yeah, and that laborers is dealing with the wicked. Job 20 and 22, in the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits, meaning difficulties. When he's trying to set up this and christen this new world order. It says, every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. And when it goes into the wicked, is dealing with the laborers. Let's see. So it says, laborer, sufferer, wretched one, the workman. Going back to Civil War, right? So reading verse 23 again, verse 22, it says, he hath taken away his neighbor's living, slayeth him, and he that defraudeth the laborer of his hire is a blood shedder. You know? But as it says in Ezekiel, blood is going to pursue you. It says, going back to Copilot, removing the poor's ability to receive small, direct, hand-to-hand help is a form of slow violence. You know, because the majority of people, they don't fuck with cash anymore, man. And you know, a lot of them don't because they don't want to be robbed. You know, or whatever reasoning they may have. This is Tobit chapter 4, verse 7. It says, give alms of thy substance. And alms doesn't necessarily mean you just always giving money. You know, you could pay alms by, you know, taking your time out to help brothers, man. You know, whether that be setting up certain classes or, you know, helping them with certain breakdowns, or maybe they need advice on life, or maybe they just need somebody to vent to, you know. But it says, give alms of thy substance, and when thou givest alms, let not thy eye be envious. neither turn thy face from any poor, and the face of the Most High shall not be turned away from thee. And another dude, when I was just chilling, waiting to start working, he didn't come up to nobody else but me. It seemed like he was a nigga Edomite, which, majority of them are Jakes anyway. And out of all people he asked for some money from was me. And once again, I said, I don't got it, because I did it. I didn't have any money, and the money I did have was on a card. And if those were tests, and I failed, Salakia Yao Bashin Yao Shai. But nonetheless, I didn't have nothing to give, man. And there was a point of time I always used to give what I didn't have. Especially predominantly to the brotherhood. I'll just give, the money all the money I had, and I'll just wait till next paycheck. Or I'll borrow money from family members or something. Which that's not a good spirit to be in. But that's what I did. It says, "Let not thy eye be envious, neither turn thy face from any poor, and the face of the Most High shall not be turned away from thee. Thou hast abundance, give alms accordingly." So if you have abundance, give alms accordingly. And especially tithes. I like paying tithes, paying alms. I like helping the underdog, man. I'm all for the underdog. And we're underdogs. What do they call it? The outliner. Those that you don't expect to win. I'm not for the brash and the arrogant. It says, "If thou hast abundance, give alms accordingly. If thou have but a little, be not afraid to give according to that little." So, when these individuals, because it's been like 3 or 4 times, man, I don't have any physical money. Now, I always hear Apostle Tahar says he keeps changing money around for that particular reason. But right now, I just don't have the capacity to do that, man. The Most High is not giving me any surplus right now. He's just giving me daily bread, which I'm content with. I'm content with it. It says, "For thou layest up a good treasure for thyself against the day of necessity," which is the day of need, when, the famine hits. Going back to Copilot, it says, "Alms presuppose direct transfer. You see the poor, you give. A system that makes that practically impossible fights this command." And it does, man. Now, I know I got a whole closet full of water bottles that I thought I was collecting to turn in. And I probably could have used some of that to pay tithes and pay, distribute to maybe some poor out here, some those in misfortune. But, Nevada doesn't have any recycling in which, they pay for it like California does. And you can't take those same bottles to California and cash them out, they'll say it's fraud. So that just shows you the how this society is, man. That's the reason why I don't see anyone with, shopping carts full of cans and bottles here like you would in California, man. Which, if you're in your right mind, that would be a safety net if you're in that position where, people go around and collect cans and collect bottles and be making a lot of money, man. It says, buy or sell, Old Testament Hebrew roots around Quanah, to acquire, buy, and makar, to sell, surrender. Greek, agorazo, to buy in the marketplace. Paleo, to sell. Tied to marketplace access, gatekeeping, and digital gates. Poor, needy, Hebrew, ani, anah, afflicted, humbled, oppressed, which is the Israelites. Greek, phakos, utterly destitute, crouching, begging. Emphasis, not just low income, but structurally crushed. And you have to be able to discern if it's actually someone that is really in need or if it's somebody that's just trying to suppress the appetite, trying to get high or drunk. Mammon, Aramaic origin, linked to wealth, possessions, that which is trusted. Teaching hook, who do you trust, God or the system that can switch you off? Mark, Revelation 13, Greek charagma, engraving, stamp, brand, a impressed mark, which is the digital all, right? Overlay, physical visible sign plus system registration plus allegiance. Oppression, Hebrew, a shock, to press upon, extort, crush, used with Amos, Micah, Sirach to show economic pressure as a form of violence. So it says news and real world pattern, homeless in the decline of cash. Declining cash equals declining street support. As card, phone, and app payments dominate, fewer people carry physical cash. Studies and outreach groups note that as cash use drops, spontaneous donations to people experiencing homelessness drop as well, because most people literally have nothing physical to hand over. And that's the truth. And at this point, it's just a show when you see niggas with money phones and money fans and money stacks. It's just something to show, because people don't use physical money as much as they used to anymore, man. It's all digital. It's all about the bank account. Cashless businesses and exclusion. Legal and policy analysts has argued that fully cashless businesses discriminate against low income and homeless individuals who lack bank accounts, cards, or stable IDs, reinforcing cycles of homelessness and exclusion from basic goods and services. I don't carry cash anymore as a social script. Reporting on cashless trends shows how common it is now for passerby to tell homeless individuals they have no cash, while the bottom system celebrates convenience and efficiency in digital payments, masking the cost to those who live outside the banking grid. Uh, so it says AI commentary, tying it together for a camp rating lesson. The system is moving to total economic gatekeeping. Revelation 13 and 16 through 17, or Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 17, gives the prophetic frame control of buying and selling as a tool of allegiance. A cashless ID linked app based economy is the clearest modern infrastructure for that. Two, the homeless are the early warning siren. When a society stops using cash, the first people cut off from everyday generosity are those who live on the street. They don't have terminals, merchant accounts, or often even phones. Their suffering is a preview of what no man might buy or sell looks like at scale. What looks like convenience is actually consolidation. Every swipe, tap, and scan centralizes power. Banks, payment processors, and states gain the ability to approve or deny your access. The poor, undocumented, and unbanked are already on the wrong side of that gate. 4. Scripture sides with the poor, not the system. Amos, Sirach, James, and Revelation are all expose the same pattern. The rich build mechanisms that swallow up the needy, and the Most High calls that bloodshed. A cashless world that erases the poor's ability to receive direct help is not neutral, it's more architecture. Teaching angle, which, that's the sign of the conclusion. So I just wanted to make a quick video. Well, it's probably not a quick video, but I just wanted to make a video on this reoccurring experience and the realization that, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to suffer, man. And if Yahweh Shem Shah got you, he got you. So with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified. And I'm going to say shalom.